Welcome, folks. I had an interesting revelation today that I realized would make a great video to share with everybody. So today we are going to talk about specific skills, your player ratings, and how those skills affect those ratings and the value of those, and why we might be seeing some of the performance we're getting out of those skills. And in particular, ultimately, what I'm going to be getting to is the batting skill legend. So, first, let me introduce you to get you to think about some things before we enter into the actual thought. Consider a OVR 70 hitter compared to an OVR 990 hitter, and what type of performance you see out of the 70 versus the 90. I'll lead you and basically tell you, there's a fairly significant improvement between an OVR 90 hitter versus a 70. Now, compare an OVR 90 versus an OVR 110 hitter. Now, I realize a lot of people might not have had the chance to see the difference in behavior between these, but and that's a 20 OVR gap, just like the first comparison. But what I'm going to tell you is that the improvement between 90 to 110 is not as substantial as you see of a 90 hitter compared to a 70. Okay, that's the first point to note. The second thing to note is think of how your pinch hitters perform. You get a plus 20 to all your ratings when you put a pinch hitter in. Does that guarantee that pinch hitter is going to get a hit? And is he that significantly better than without those 20? Obviously, he is going to be better, but it certainly does not guarantee you a hit when you have all those additional numbers. So basically, what I'm leading you to recognize is that purely increasing your batting ratings, your power, your contact, and your eye does not directly impact your performance in a linear fashion. So, for example, let's take a look at, let me enter a league game here, and I'll give you an example. If we look at my first batter, you're going to see that I have JD Martinez, and he's sitting right now with Legend and Training Junkie as his skills. And if you look at his numbers when he comes up here, 133, 147, and 124. He should hit like a god, really. But I can tell you from ranked performance, actually, let's go ahead and get out here. We'll look at his actual numbers and how he's performing in ranked play. And we'll go to my batters. We'll sort by average. We'll go down to the bottom, and we'll see JD Martinez is hitting 276. 276. Okay. And by the way, that I can tell you right up, that is with a good number of weaker pitchers that he's faced. So he's by far not hitting anywhere near what you would think he would get out of his numbers. So connecting that back to earlier what we said, purely increasing the numbers does not guarantee that the player is going to behave very well. Okay, so now that would be linear progression. If he had like 150 power and suddenly you were seeing a ton of home runs out of him, that and if you increase it to 170 and even hit substantially more, that would be more of a linear progression. Now let me introduce you, if you're a gamer, this is not going to be new to you, but if you purely are a sports type of person and are not as familiar with game design, I'm going to introduce you to a concept that is common amongst all games, and I can guarantee you it's in here because we've pretty much just proven it. And that is the concept of diminishing returns. Diminishing returns state that basically as you increase towards what is the maximum possible rating for something, or the best performance for something, it gets harder and harder to get there. So let me pull up a chart and give you an example. First, let me get my chart. Okay, the yellow line is a linear progression, and I've just thrown some hypothetical numbers out here. Put your power along the bottom, and I said, okay, kind of what would we gauge our home run production based on, we would generally base it on how many home runs per at bats we were getting. So with a linear progression, you'd see that for every point of power you put into it, you would see, uh, increased home run production. Whereas a diminishing returns type of scenario would be the initial points that you put into power are going to be substantially more effective than the ones at the later stage. So you can see if you look at the blue bar with a diminishing returns system in play, increasing your power from 105 to 110 really doesn't net you that much. Okay? And what I'm saying here is MLB 9 innings Pro, or MLB 9 innings 18, is using a system of diminishing returns for your player ratings. Once you hit a certain level, and we don't know what this level is. For me, I like to think of it as roughly 105, 110, and that's at which point I believe that's when it starts to kick in. But nonetheless, once you hit a certain point, adding more points to your power or your pitcher's velocity or whatever is really not going to have a huge effect. So if we translate this into skills like Legend, if I'm trying to put Legend on top of a player whose batting skills are already at 110 each, and I'm boosting them up to like 118, the effect of that is going to be significantly less than if I were to put a Legend on a batter with OVR 90. Okay. Once again, this is a hypothetical chart. This is based not in reality. It's just to prove a point. So, taking all of that into effect, let's flip back over and let me take a look at one of my players that I am currently working on, and I'll show you with the decision that I'm facing right now. I got this Ryan Braun recently. Okay, and you can see his numbers are pretty decent. I told you my threshold is somewhere around 105, 110 is when I start to think they're closing in on their cap. But if you look at his skills, you see I have Training Junkie, which is going to boost his batting skills. I have Heavy Hitter and Full Swing Hitter, which is going to boost his power. Now, you can see that I've chosen to max out or work on Training Junkie first. I think it'd be probably stupid not to. But that's going to take me into the 115 to 120 range for all those skills, which should put him at the top end of what I would expect to see those ratings to be. Now, the next question would be, do I invest in Heavy Hitter or do I invest in Full Swing Hitter? Full Swing Hitter is going to add to my power. But I've already told you I think there are diminishing returns on that. Would it make sense for me to put points into Full Swing Hitter, further increasing the power when it's really not going to be that effective? I'm going to say no. At this point, this is introducing a new concept or new belief or whatever. I'm proponing that when it comes to top-end players, such as this, who are at the top end of their rating range, that skills such as Heavy Hitter, Slugger's Instinct, Batting Machine, and such are going to be more effective than Legend, or on the flip side, on the pitcher side of things, something like Ace. Now, bear in mind, I'm talking specifically about batters now. We'll talk about pitchers in just a second, but nonetheless, point being, Legend, Training Junkie, not great skills for top-end players. I've shown it in the results that I've gotten. I've witnessed it season after season. Those players just don't perform that great. Now, in comparison, Charisma, however, which reduces the pitcher, is going to be that much more effective for a top-end hitter, because adding those 8 points isn't really as effective as adding, a linear amount of ratings, whereas the amount that you're reducing off the pitcher is going to be substantially more effective because you are lowering him down into the lower ranges and further down on the diminishing returns curve. A little hard to follow, but nonetheless, you get the point of, or my point being, that there are skills for top end players that are going to be more effective, that are not the ones that are based off of the player ratings, but they are affecting things like slugging percentage or in the case of untouchable, the ability, unpredictableness of the pitcher, that type of thing, the intangibles. Okay, so moving on. So I mentioned pitchers, and you've probably heard me talk about ace being a skill that really isn't that great on pitchers. And now I'm going to caveat that or the whole premise leading up to here by saying that pitching is kind of a tricky subject because we have shown, or I have seen through personal experience and other players' behaviors, that pitching machine, which is a number booster, it boosts your fastball and your breaking ball, is more effective than ace. So this kind of challenges the whole idea, but here's what I am proposing. Ace is not effective because it hits the curve. Pitching machine is effective because I think there's an additional mechanic in play that is evaluating your relative, are your fastball, are your mechanics on your breaking ball and your fastball higher than the ratings that you have for your velocity and your control, right? And if those are higher, then it's going to be applying some logic to figure out whether or not there was a successful hit versus just looking at the numbers in raw and figuring out based on those numbers what the performance is going to be. This is all theory, this is all hypothetical, but this is my personal belief as to why pitching machine is more effective than ace. Okay, I think we got our points here. Legend still sucks. I avoid it if I can, but unfortunately, I don't have a wealth of skill change tickets, so I endured on some of my players. My players with charisma perform better. I am claiming that it is because of the diminishing returns that are in effect. And that's about it. So hopefully this has been informative or interesting, and I welcome any feedback and discussion. Thanks, and bye.